Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Jeremy, founder of QuickMail.io.
Hey, and this is Jack from emailsthatsell.com.
Jack and I are naturally skeptical anytime someone says that cold email just doesn't work for their business. So before you think about quitting, listen to this. Jack and I talk about 3 different cases in which you should really give up and try something else. So unless your boss is telling you, to stop doing cold email, in which case we don't really have much advice for you, you should get quite a few ideas on how to move forward from this episode. Enjoy. Today, I'd like to talk about when is it okay to call it quits. The reason I'm telling you that is sometime I got some users on QuickMail that send me an email and say, hey, love the service, love the software, working great, but cold email didn't work for us. And I'm always kind of puzzled when this happens because I rarely think this is the reality. And I'm always wondering, did they actually try everything?
Right.
Did they try long enough, hard enough? And of course, I'm not replying, have you listened to 85 episodes before really knowing it's not working? But but it is a question that is kind of, on the back of my head is when is it actually okay to call it quits?
When you first asked me, when should you throw in the towel in the cold email game, I thought it was a really simple answer. And I thought that answer would be, you stop sending cold email when your resources are better spent in other areas, because it does take some time and money to get these things off the ground and rolling out each week properly. So I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe you stumble upon a better channel. And if that's the case, then you can go ahead and divorce yourself from cold email and dump all those resources and double down on what's working. But that's not really true, right? I mean, even if, AdWords is performing great for you, it doesn't mean that you can't supplement your lead flow with cold email. In fact, I think those two things work great together. And chances are, if you're listening to the show, you've got a number of irons in the fire. You're doing a lot of other stuff to get leads, right? So it's not as simple as, whenever you find something better to do. Instead, the question is, how do you know if you're just going through a rough patch or if you're just flat out wasting your time with cold email?
Yeah, so I'm wondering, in order to answer this question, should we have a sort of checklist? Or is there some signals that makes you think this market really doesn't work with cold email?
So I think a blanket statement would be, if you're not getting results with cold email, you're doing it wrong. And pause for a moment, educate yourself on what a good email campaign looks like, and make some revisions, and you will be able to turn it around, so to speak, to be able to say, man, I'm really glad I'm doing this cold email thing. However, I've been able to come up with 3 scenarios where it's the end of the road. It really is time to stop sending cold email. And before I read those 3 scenarios out, before we talk about what they are, just keep in mind, pretty sure it's very difficult to find a business out there that isn't able to use cold email effectively, right? I mean, that's not exactly what we're talking about here. So just keep trying things until you have a breakthrough. You're going to be able to generate customers through cold email if you're doing it right. So I would say, for the most part, just keep trying it if you feel like there's potential here, unless you find yourself in one of these 3 scenarios that we're about to talk about.
All right, so which one are they?
Number 1, you should call it quits if you're 100% certain that you've exhausted your prospect list. Now, as we talked about in episode 76, this is actually really hard to do. If you don't have a lot of prospects in your pipeline, there's so many ways that you can go about finding new prospects. And I'll let you listen to that episode in order to find out more on that. But there's a finite number of people on Earth. There's a small chance that maybe you will have attempted to contact all of them. I really doubt it. I think you can get creative, but I can just sort of draw a line in the sand and say, if that's you, then okay, cold email is not a thing for you anymore.
Yeah, and flash news for you, every year there is new people starting working. So
Exactly. I mean, that's the thing with this question. It's a stretch. If I can sort of imagine an industry that's dying, I don't know, something where it's not growing and the only players in it you've already known about. Okay, maybe once you go after them, perhaps cold email isn't the best for you. Although, Jeremy, we've talked so many times about reaching out to VIP prospects, people that can introduce you to others in your market.
That's true. More often than not, if it's not working with your direct customer, you could always find another way to work with maybe a reseller or some other people. There is always a sort of like need to reach out and do business development.
You're absolutely right. And this is the struggle with this question is I'm really tempted to just say never quit. But the reality is maybe it does make sense for some people, some companies. And if you've contacted everyone and you can't think of another creative way to create new prospects for you by going after different personas, okay, then maybe you should call it quits. All right, the next one. It's going to sound a little bit ridiculous, but if it's you, then you should stop doing cold email. All right. Imagine you're running a campaign and the campaign is somehow damaging your company reputation. Maybe the copy is atrocious. Maybe you're using your company domain and it's just destroying your ability to inbox even when you send a message to your team. But here's the important part. Imagine this is going on and you're not comfortable or you're not able to hire somebody else to help you with it. If that's the case, you need to stop sending cold email. I mean, I'm struggling to think of somebody who fits this, but I imagine there's somebody out there who just doesn't have any.
Yeah, so let's draw on this one. That probably is you don't have the resources to focus on more things, and one channel is actually working better than cold email. I guess in this case, that kind of makes sense, right? You can only spread yourself so thin. So yeah, I would understand that way, I think.
I've got one more, Jeremy. This one borders, when I say it, you may say that's another ridiculous question, but I know people who this applies to. And that's folks who don't want any new customers right now.
Ooh.
If, let's say, you've been running a campaign and maybe it's worked beyond your expectations and you're just too busy with onboarding new customers.
Oh, yeah, I do have those cases. Yes, I know.
Okay, so there you go. So these kinds of people, fortunately, are in a position where they can't really take on any new customers. And maybe this is when you scale up and get ready for growth and you hire more people to accommodate these new customers, so you work on your processes. But if you're not able to give the customers the time, the product they need, you should stop sending cold email. And again, maybe this is something you pause and come back to, but certainly don't be sending out prospecting emails when you've got your hands full on your customer side.
Yeah, on a similar note, I remember when you told me at some point that you were doing cold email for a company, but you kind of stopped because that company actually couldn't keep up with all the leads they were getting.
Yeah.
And they were just like not following up on them and, just basically wasting the efforts of doing cold emails.
It breaks my heart, but really there's many companies that would surprise you that are just not set up to receive warm leads and take care of them like they need to be. And this is a perfect reason to push the pause button. I'm not so sure if it's call it quits forever, but definitely push the pause button, get your arrangements together, get your things together so that you're ready to give the leads the attention they deserve. And it doesn't help the company out. It doesn't help the leads out if they're just sort of getting hung out to dry once they're trying to find out about what you have to offer. So if you're not ready for it, don't send cold email.
Yeah, and that's kind of like 101. I guess the people who actually cancel a subscription and just say like cold email didn't work out for us. If you're at that stage yourself and you're kind of considering like maybe that's not for me or my market may resonate with other things and I tried cold email, but it didn't work. There's probably two things that you could do at this stage. And one thing I want to ask you, Jack. The first one is listen to 2 of our episodes, which is episode 49, what to do when you're not getting enough replies. I mean, that's definitely one good episode at that stage to check out. Because if you're telling yourself this, it's because you're probably running out of things to try or things to consider when it comes to what you should do next. And the other episode is episode 72 about test this non-simple cold email A/B testing idea, because also it could be just due to a simple lack of experimentations.
So let's flip the question on its head. When should you not call it quits? If you have two things, you need to keep going with cold email. Number one, if you have a market that you know is willing to pay money for a particular product or service, so maybe you have existing customers in this market and there's more people just like that, And two, if you're able to get their email address, then you should not stop cold emailing because there's money to be made there. And that the point is you're able to reach a market that needs what you have and has the means to pay for it. So if those two things come together, you're leaving money on the table if you stop cold email.
And the other thing that I want to bring to attention as well is it could be also more often than not, I believe that it comes down to misexpectations. And people,
What do you mean by that?
I mean, people will have the idea that they're going to start cold email and that's going to work, right there and then. I mean, sometimes we just have to turn down prospects because they come and ask us like, hey, I just bought this list of 20,000 businesses and I'd like to start and try cold email. Very quickly, they realize that this was a terrible idea. And the problem is at this stage, they just stop and quit instead of actually trying to figure out or actually give themselves enough time to learn about the craft and really try to extract the money that is possible from this really viable channel.
And I have to say now, like if maybe you're a business owner and you're listening and you say, well, I don't really have the time to learn the perfect approach and master cold email. Well, folks, that's what hiring an agency is for. And you don't really need to become an expert. You can just pay an expert to do it for you. It's much better to do that than to half-ass cold email and say, yeah, it just didn't work. I pressed send. And you probably had an approach that never would have worked for anybody. And instead, it could have been a raving success. It's just a matter of figuring out if you should be doing this yourself. Is it worth the time, effort, and resources to master it? Or is this something that you should just, make sure it's done right the first time with an agency you trust?
That inspires a few points for me. The first one is give yourself enough time to learn it. Otherwise, don't try it, right? Don't start. It's not because you have a list that you should feel compelled to actually try to reach out to them.
And by the way, everybody's got a list. Having a list or access to a list is not special. And in fact, that's like the ticket into the game. It's probably not even a good list, right? So if you're coming into cold email brand new with a list, you should probably just trash it because you're going to learn that your list is garbage more often than not.
Yes, and if you're at that point, you probably should listen to episode 5, How to Find Hot Leads. That will teach you on how to do prospecting right. But realistically speaking, from my own experience and experience of people trying cold email, it really takes 3 to 4 months dedication to actually reach out to a point where you get it, right? And then things start actually getting some good replies and you feel like this is a viable channel that could actually be working.
In that time frame, you can go from, hey, I just bought a list of 20,000 business owners in the United States and I'm going to send them an email with a buy button, to much more sophisticated campaigns that are way more targeted, that start conversations and get people on the phone with you that will eventually be interested in buying what you have to offer. So it's a world of difference. And if you're not willing to put in the time, that may be my 4th bullet point on when you should stop cold emailing. If you're not going to bother learning and you're not going to bother paying someone to do it well, cold email will probably not benefit your business. If anything, you may just piss off some people that you have their email and be looking for your next fast cash next week.
That's right. And I would even say, like you mentioned my point already, try an agency. If really you believe that I don't have the time or I don't have the skills, don't want to learn it and don't have time for any resources, that's one way. The second way that I know a lot of people do is they actually hire an SDR to do it internally. But then in this case, I would say make sure that this person has some experience and or make sure that they have access to courses on how to do cold email or at least have a place where to go in order to get more resources when they get stuck. I think that's very important. And our podcast, obviously, shameless plug.
There you go. No shame there. So yeah, just not assuming that you're a master at it because there's a learning curve. Even if you're good at marketing on Facebook or YouTube content, it's different form of acquiring leads and requires some effort and some perseverance if you want to master it. But, I think it's easy for me to say, like, if you're ready to throw in the towel, there's probably something you're not aware of that can turn your campaign around. And actually, if you're not quite ready to hire an agency to do the whole thing for you, something that has helped a lot of folks out there is they just pay for a consultation. So sort of share exactly their approach. And in a couple of hours, you can get someone who's been doing this enough to know where some of the pitfalls are. And they may not be able to do that for you on the call, but you can get some of the takeaways that you probably didn't know were hurting your campaign's results. And so anyway, consultations could be sort of a shortcut to learning everything there is to know about cold email if you want to do it right.
Last thing that I would say is if you're actually not convinced, you're trying to open cold email, and like I say, dedicate at least 3 to 4 months for realistic cold results. You could also spend 20% of your time on other initiatives or side initiatives and make the move only when those initiatives actually bring better results. Because what's typical mistake is that you try cold email, doesn't work. Let me try Facebook ads. Oh, doesn't work. Well, let me try, Google ads. Oh, doesn't work. Let me try. And it's a sort of like new shiny thing that keeps on coming. So I would say keep at it for at least 3 to 4 months and potentially spend 20% of your time on something else to really verify that, okay, this actually works better than the other one. And then eventually then move on and keep repeating that process and always allocating 20% of your time to experimentation of new channels.
There's a fantastic book out there by Perry Marshall. It's called 80-20 Sales and Marketing. And in the book, Perry talks about how the best marketers today have mastered 1 or 2 channels. Like that's it. They're not trying to figure out how to make money in 7 different ways on the internet. Instead it's just mastering 1 or 2. And there's this Bruce Lee quote that says, "I fear not the man who knows how to kick 1,000 ways. I fear the man who has practiced one kick 1,000 times." Right? And it's just like knowing, is this something that you see yourself using for your business over the long term? And if so, it could very much pay off to learn it and to dig in and spend those 3 to 4 months that Jeremy's saying to really figure this out in a way so that you've given it an honest shot before you call it quits.
And the last thing I would say about when it's okay to quit is when you've been using a certain tactic that's been proven to work well with your cold email. It's been working for a long time, but that tactic become less and less effective, and it brings like diminishing returns at the same time as you don't have more resources to put on cold email and you have other more productive channels to harvest. I guess that's probably it as a summary.
Maybe we should call this episode a quit.
Okay, but before we do that, I'd like us to, most of the people when they're quitting is because they're running out of ideas, right, to experiment. Because honestly speaking, when you're excited and you think, oh, that could work, you usually want to try it or you're trying it. So what could people do when they are at that stage where they're ready to quit in order to figure out, let's try one more thing?
So this podcast is a really good resource for getting ideas on one more thing.
That's true.
We've got a ton of episodes. Just check out podcast.quickmail.io, comb through. There's going to be a title that pops out at you. Give it a listen. Listen to a few episodes, maybe, as you're going to and from work. You're going to get some ideas on what you can tweak next. That or try a consultation if you're serious about finding where your campaign's sort of leaking and patching it up so you get those leads that you're looking for. So basically, if there's a will, there's a way. If you know cold email something that's worth pursuing, I think you can be able to crack it.
There you go. Thanks, Jack.
All right. Thanks, Jeremy. Before you decide to throw in the towel and walk away from cold email for good, consider a few points that may help you decide if you're wasting your time or just going through a rut. You should stop cold emailing if 1, you don't want any new customers, 2, it's damaging your brand and you're not willing to either improve it yourself or hire an expert to help, or 3, you're 100% sure that you've gone after every single prospect already. For all other cases, I say keep at it. Because if there's a market willing and able to pay for your offer and a way to find more of their emails, you'll be leaving money on the table if you stop sending cold email. Want more on this uplifting topic of quitting? Then check out Seth Godin's book called The Dip. It's a quick read, but you get to listen to a master storyteller explain why giving up may be your best business idea yet. Hey, cold emailer.
Yeah, you.
If you got some value from this episode, give us a high five by sharing a 2-sentence review on iTunes.
Or Stitcher or TuneIn. That works too.
It's a quick way to help other growth-minded folks like us find this podcast
so they can send awesome emails
and make everyone's inbox a better place. Thanks.